You know that weird feeling when something looks obviously wrong, but it's happening so openly that your brain hesitates to call it corruption? A paper bag in a parking lot makes sense. The flowchart doesn't. On July 4th, when the country tells itself stories about public duty and sacrifice, we're looking at what happens when public office gets treated like a private asset and why disclosure can become less like accountability and more like a receipt for the grift. This is Shrink the Nation. Let's go. This is Shrink the Nation, a podcast for thoughtful, informed adults, preferably holding a drink and definitely holding a thought. The views expressed here are ours alone. They do not represent our employers, institutions, licensing boards, government agencies, bourbon distilleries, or most emphatically, our families. They've been very clear about that. This show is for education and entertainment only. Nothing you hear is medical, psychiatric, legal, or professional advice. We're clinicians, not your clinicians. If something we say stirs you up, that's not a crisis, that's a journal entry, or an email sent politely. We're here to challenge ideas, not diagnose strangers on the internet. And if you are in real distress, please reach out to a professional who can actually help you. All right, Robbie, we are back. I'm David. I've got over 20 years in the military. I'm a board certified psychiatrist twice over. And today, I'm going to correct a major flaw in my plan last week to drink the Old Crow last. So we were doing science, Robbie, and my hypothesis was completely failed. The null hypothesis was true. I was dead wrong. You don't start with the good stuff, apparently, unless you're going to drink a whole shit ton of it. And maybe that was the problem. See, there's these factors,
Was
confounding
in
variables.
concurrence with you.
Yeah.
That first sip always tastes like gasoline. So I kind of thought that you were going to get yourself to a point where that Old Crow was not going to be that distasteful. Didn't work out that way.
I was just wrong. Now, again, maybe we just need to play around with this a little bit, work out the different variables that go into this, but I think it's going to be like amount and time. But I'm going to go backwards today. So I've got 3 bourbons. Number 1, only in the order that I'm drinking them, is Crow 86, which is Old Crow's older brother. So this one is an 86 proof Old Crow version that I think was aged for 3 years, sitting in my liquor cabinet for another 1, so at least 4 years. I'm pretty sure this is just Old Crow that's been
Is that
sitting in there.
plastic?
It is plastic.
That's classic.
Yeah, I think per gallon it costs less to gas. I think if you pull up the label on it, there's an Old Crow label underneath it from just like last year's stock or something. They're like, oh, it's time. But we're going to start with Old Crow 86. Then, whilst I was selecting my other options at the liquor store today, I came across this beauty, which is what I
Collector's item.
think is, it's like a 4-gallon bottle of Evan Williams. And it is actual glass, but it says commemorative edition and America 250 in red, white, and blue. I'm pretty sure this is Evan Williams with a fancy label, but I don't know. It doesn't really say that it's not that. So that's why I'm assuming, but it gives a nice little statement here about America's 250th anniversary. So I thought, what the hell? Let's drink this. It is July 4th anyway.
I agree. Nothing says, and you've got the Evan bottled and bond there too.
Are you announcing what I got? You announce what you
Sorry.
fucking got, you asshole.
All right. You showed it to me.
Well, and finally, I got the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, which is going to be my closer tonight. We're going to give this one a try, bottled under U.S. government supervision. So anything that's been done under U.S. government supervision is aces.
It's high quality.
Aces. It's
Yeah.
the top. So that's the order I'm going to drink them. We'll announce it
Let
as
me
they
warn
change.
you, you're closing with a 100 proof bourbon. So just, go easy, my friend. Go easy. Hey, everybody. This is Rob. Long time in the military, long time in psychiatry. Only one board, though. David wins. He's doubly boarded. And this evening, I had just a little bit of the Evan Williams bottled and bond left over. I don't know. I guess I've had the bottle for about a month now. And tonight's the night that the bottle got emptied.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw.
All right. Well, why bother with the America 250 version of Evan Williams, which is probably just Evan Williams? Because today is America's birthday. Happy birthday, America. 250 years. You made it. Just perfection as a country. No shadow.
None.
But no, actually, I kid. This is the day when America tells a story about public things. Public sacrifice, public trust, public office, public duty, public honor. And so the stories that we're going to talk about this week, it's what happens when those public things get converted into private assets. And that's why we're recording today. It's not going to post today. Nobody's going to hear it on the 4th. In fact, they'll probably be quite sick of the 4th by the time they listen to it. But you know what? It's the 4th right now. So you might even get to hear fireworks going off in the background. You might get to hear some terrified fucking dogs hiding under my chair. But here we are. So you ready?
I'm ready. I'm stoked. You may or may not be able to hear it, but there's a lot of fireworks going off outside. I do have noise canceling headphones on right now, thankfully, because I was getting a little sick of it. Felt like a crotchety old man, just mad at the world, mad at kids out there, hoping someone blows a finger off.
Somebody will definitely blow a finger off, but just shaking your cane at the kids in the front yard. All right. So this segment today is brought to you by Robbie's Only Flags, the internet's least erotic 4th of July subscription service. For just $17.76 a month, you can watch Robbie celebrate America the only way he knows how, standing next to a grill, holding a sparkler and whispering, "Is this corruption? Or do I just not understand crypto?" Premium subscribers get exclusive content like Robbie slowly reading a financial disclosure form until he needs to lie down, or Robbie trying to look patriotic in sunglasses he clearly bought at a gas station. In our most requested video, Robbie finds out the Grift has paperwork. This 4th of July, don't subscribe to OnlyFans. Subscribe to Only Flags, because nothing says independence like watching one man lose faith in democracy in cargo shorts.
Hey, for the record, folks, I don't wear short pants. I refuse. And I'll tell you why I refuse. I'm a fucking adult. Adults don't wear shorts, except when they're running or working out.
The short pants.
I didn't do cargo pants.
You're such an old man.
I am. I am. I'll wear it. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So, Robbie, this week, we all learned together. Yeah, I know you were shocked because you texted me almost instantly, just in complete and utter astonishment that it turns out, everyone put your drinks down and I want you spitting into your windshield. Donald Trump and his family have made billions of dollars just in the last year. I'm going to pause for a second to let you kind of compose yourself because you still look surprised. You okay
It's a
now?
big deal. 2 billion with a B, $2 billion in his financial disclosures, mostly for friggin' crypto. And that crypto was a meme coin that basically carries his likeness. Interestingly, he made 2 billion and the investors lost pretty much everything that they had put into it. So none of the money he earned was actually from the meme coin. It was from the licensing fees for the meme coin. So he made 2 billion. Everyone else lost money. And he did it through the office. And it is apropos that we are taping on the 4th of July because the 4th of July wasn't necessarily about independence from Britain. It was about rejecting personal rule. So our founding fathers and mothers, as imperfect as they were, as a world-class study in hypocrisy that they may well be, they were really capable of high-minded principles. And they were terrified of monarchy, patronage, corruption, hereditary power, foreign influence, and public office becoming a private possession. And everything they designed, and again, were they perfect? No, there was some like world class hypocrisy involved. But everything they designed was geared toward minimizing those risks. And basically, the idea that office is a held trust, it's not an owned thing, and you shouldn't profit from public service. This administration has reestablished a bar. This is what prompted me. So I saw that public disclosure and I immediately texted you and I said, all right, this is what we have to talk about this week because it is grift at a level that I don't think our brains can actually comprehend. When there's a $10,000 cash money transaction wrapped in a brown paper bag done in a Motel 6, we get that. We can understand that. And we're outraged by it. But when the president of the United States makes $1 billion off of the office, his likeness right out in the open, it's difficult to comprehend. When the president's sons are engaged in tungsten mining in Kazakhstan, when the president's sons start a drone company and enter into the military industrial complex with a $1.1 billion contract, we can't. And the thing that I want all of our listeners to think about was how much of this last election cycle was dedicated to the Biden crime family and Joe Biden's son and the money he made. Now, did he make money off of his daddy being president? He did. He made millions. I don't know how many millions, honestly, off the top of my head.
Yeah. They accused of about 27 million. It wasn't really clear, but it was in that like
It's a lot of money.
yeah, 8 million to 27 million. So we're somewhere in there. Like it was, I mean, it's a lot of money. Yeah.
They have made billions with a B. We're talking a factor of 10 or more money off this. And they're there largely because they made the argument that the Biden crime family was profiting off of the office. So I thought, you know what? We have got to talk about the psychology behind this, both the psychology of them feeling entitled to do such things and the psychology of us almost being impossible to wrap our heads around it.
What's interesting to me is that the moniker the Biden crime family got put on, let's just say all the Bidens, for the actions of the one son, not to excuse the behavior, because that's obviously not okay. But that gets used as an excuse for all of the dealings that have been going on with the Trump family since the first presidency, not even the second one, but the first one. I don't know that to me it's necessarily about the hypocrisy. I think they're both wrong, scale of which is kind of atrocious either way. If anything, you might make an argument that whatever Hunter Biden was doing during his father's presidency was chump change and kind of little league compared to what the Trump family had been doing in the first presidency. And then we get to the second presidency, and that's just exploded into something more. But what you bring up is maybe even more important, the fact that it's so much. It's this unfathomable amount of corruption.
The scale's mind numbing.
And it's not just the money. It was how, right? It was the action to it. It was who's involved, and it's ongoing, right? It's not just the fact that the amount is so big, and it is so big, but it's an amount that we can't even fathom the amount of money that $1 billion is, much less multiple $1 billion. But it goes from, it's the Biden crime family because Hunter Biden was doing things that just weren't kosher, to every member of his close circle involved in these things. And that's what we know about. That's what we're aware of. That's all we can really talk about is what we're seeing. These dealings are crazy. He took his first flight on the Qatari bribe jet. And you can't count that in the financial disclosures. But what did it cost the American taxpayer to retrofit that jet into something that is suitable for the president of the United States? Because it wasn't cheap, I would assume. And I'm guessing it was more than the
$1 billion.
27 million.
Yes, he touted this as a gift. It was a gift and made the argument that why wouldn't we take a gift? It's going to save the American taxpayers $400 million. The plane itself was $400 million. Great, awesome. But then we took control of it and we had to retrofit it to be Air Force One. And as it turns out, the retrofit cost is estimated to be right around $1 billion. That's with a B. That's 9 zeros. So it wasn't a gift. And here's what's even funnier. He now is saying that it's his and he's going to take it with him. And he's saying he wants to take it with him to put at his presidential library. But I fully expect he'll fly around in it as a 83-year-old man. So it's now his plane. It's not a gift. It wasn't a gift to the United States government. We invested $1 billion so that he could take it with him, which whether that'll come to be, who knows. But yeah, that's a massive grift. And it is right in keeping with the grift of, say, the ballroom. I'm doing this and me and my friends are going to pay for it. Wait, no, I need $400 million more. It's get your foot in the door and then demand more. And it is such a ridiculous pattern that, again, the dollar amounts are mind numbing. We can understand money in a paper bag. That's concrete. We get that. We're designed to identify cheating on a scale of Bill down the street took my vegetables and didn't give me the right amount of money. We're designed to understand cheating on that level. We are not designed to understand this cryptocurrency grift because it requires like an org chart to understand. It's massive and it's complex. The family has been estimated to have earned $2.3 billion on crypto. And crypto, as early as 2 years ago, Trump is on record saying crypto is a scam. He said this in an interview. Crypto is a scam. It is meaningless. It is worthless. It stands for nothing. It is not real. It's a scam until he saw the dollar signs. And when the dollar signs became so obvious, then it became an opportunity.
I think what you're saying, what it comes down to, is that because it's not simple to understand, it's not simple to even talk about, even for us to explain why is this a grift, is so difficult that it's easier to just not see it that way. There's a partisan perspective to this for some reason, but if you just want to accept it and move along because you want it to not be true, that it's a grift, then it's easy to overlook as being something that's probably not right because it's so complicated and it's the nuance that goes into it that makes it really, really difficult for anybody to understand it. I mean, we hear it and we're like, whoa, that's not good. But even to get down to the fine details and understand, we don't know all of the details. We know his financial disclosures for that year. We know what he made on crypto. We don't know how much his campaign pulled in. We don't know what the government spent on things that he's going to try to hold on to. And as an aside, it would be really interesting to see the next president, if that president were not in alignment with Trump, set up an executive order to make sure he doesn't get that plane. But it's easy to look at a shady deal in a parking lot and go, okay, that's not right. Because why would they do it in a parking lot? Our minds are just wired for that. It's so simple.
Well, and that's been kind of the genius is that so much of the law breaking has been done out in the open and it confuses us. I've seen these things and I know when they happen and when I hear about them, I think that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound legal. But the fact that it's out in the open confuses me just enough that my brain can't even lock onto it long enough to be outraged about it. And this cryptocurrency thing is fascinating to me because it's like the perfect instrument for modern political grift because even the money is embarrassed to call itself money. It's not real. So it is perfect for political grift in this modern world. I'm outraged, but I find myself laughing about it more than being angry because my brain wants to just leave my skull and walk itself down to the corner bar and bathe in bourbon.
You bring up some interesting points, and I want to break them down if I can. I've finished enough Crow 86 now that I might struggle to do this. In fact, I just poured some of the Evan Williams commemorative edition, America 250, and I'm going to try that out.
I like Evan Williams. David doesn't. David doesn't.
It's smooth. Oh my God. That's for,
David,
wow.
it has the perfect level of pain for me. Perfect.
Yeah, that is, wow. Well, good for you. That is not great. It's okay. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this together, Robbie. You and I. I'm gonna get this one down.
It's like heading into
That's rough.
combat.
Yeah. My God.
We just got to keep our heads on a swivel and we'll get through this together.
It has just that right amount of cat anus, I think. Flavor
Stay
to
frosty,
it, I
David.
assume. Yeah. Anyway.
Yep. Just stay
Okay.
frosty.
God, that just bathed my brain in GABA. Just anyway. Anyway. So what you mentioned, if I can remember, God, the hippocampus just got cleansed of anything that was actively happening. Okay, so what you said was that you watch this happen, and it's just so difficult to wrap your brain around, like, why is this illegal? And it got me thinking that this is how psychopaths speak in this way that really confuses people. And this has this feel to it because they lack a fully functional amygdala, a fear center. And a Robert D. Hare defined psychopath is what I'll call it. So Robert Hare.
Define that for our tens of
That's what I'm gonna
listeners
do.
who
So
probably aren't read into Robert D. Hare.
they probably are not. So Robert Hare was not the first person to speak about psychopaths. Hervey Cleckley was the first person to write about psychopaths in a book called The Mask of Sanity. Later, Robert D. Hare, who's a psychologist, wrote a book called Without Conscience that spoke about his interactions with psychopaths. The term psychopath is not an accepted term within the DSM-5, the Bible that psychiatrists use. But Robert Hare very much believes in the psychopath. And it's this intersection between sociopathy, which psychiatrists would just call antisocial personality disorder, and criminality really is kind of the intersection that Robert D. Hare would probably considers it. There are other authors, other people who have written about psychopaths. Kevin Dutton has done so as well. He writes about them much more favorably. There's an author by the name of John Ronson who actually wrote the book The Men Who Stare at Goats, and he wrote a book called The Psychopathy Test, and it's a lot more favorable towards psychopaths. And they're all very good. They're all great reads, by the way. I'd definitely read if you're interested in the topic.
I
Read them.
highly recommend, going back and reading Cleckley's The Mask of Sanity. It's 1941. interestingly,
Mhm.
when it was published. And yeah, you kind of have to read it because it's just multiple case examples, but it really highlights how a patient could present it as rational, as charming, as socially intact, and completely be lacking in any deeper emotional integration, remorse, or genuine moral understanding, and how they can break the wall right in front of you with a smile on their face and then be surprised that they get caught because they do it right out in the open because they do not have that integrated moral compass.
Yeah, and the more modern studies have looked at psychopaths because while they make up a relatively small portion of the population, they make up a very large portion of the prison population. So something like 25% of prisoners would be considered psychopaths per Robert Hare and his PCLR, which is the psychopathy checklist that he created. Anyway, the point is, one of the things that he talks about is that psychopaths have this way of speaking to you and lying right to your face, even to the point that what they're saying contradicts something else that they're saying. But because they lack, and we'll just say amygdala function, I mean, there are other parts of the brain that are hypoactive with a psychopath that lead to this, but essentially the amygdala is the fear center of the brain. But because they don't have the fear that they're going to be found out by the things that they're saying, they don't express any of the typical things that we would expect to see when we're talking to somebody. They don't look to be nervous. They don't even express the pheromones that somebody might have when they're lying, when they're making things up. And so when you were talking about how these things are just being done in the open and our sensors just aren't going off, well, that's exactly what psychopaths do when they're talking to you. One of the examples that Robert Hare gave was that during an evaluation with one of the psychopaths that they were talking with in prison, they asked him, "Hey, are you a violent person?" And he said very calmly and collectedly, "No, not at all. I'm not a violent person. I mean, I've stabbed a few people in the face every once in a while. I've murdered a couple of people, but I'm not a violent person. Nobody would call me that." But the person who was interviewing them, it didn't raise the hairs on the back of the neck. It didn't compute to them that what was being said was just contradicting even the case study history that they had on this person because of the way that it was being said. It just wasn't triggering that.
Let me tell you a quick story of up close and personal engagement I had with a psychopath. So, when I was a young psychiatrist, I was maybe less than 2 years out of residency. I took a moonlighting job at a prison. It was a shitty job. It was really a bad job, but they paid well. And, I come out of residency, I had a ton of debt and I wanted to catch up. But at any rate, the job was 3 hours away from where I lived. So I got up at like 2 in the morning and I started work at like 5 a.m. and I'd work until like 7 p.m. and then I'd drive home. So made for a very long day. And I just saw psychopath after psychopath in this prison, the medical unit. For whatever reason, they stuck me in the back. There was a little office that I was in, and I didn't have like supervision. I didn't have like a guard standing there with me. And I was sitting in my office, and it was a pretty little office. Really wasn't set up well for my safety, not even a little bit. Like I was trapped in the room. The door was beyond them. At any rate, for the most part, these were mostly people who had pretty severe substance use disorders, some relatively profound psychiatric conditions, and they didn't really trigger much in the way of a fear response from me. In fact, I historically have engaged pretty well with that population, so it fit. Go figure. So one day, I was seeing a gentleman who I'd seen before, and he was working me for Xanax or something. And of course, in a prison environment, they frown on such things. We don't use them much. And in fact, in general practice, there's a limited sliver of utilization for those sorts of things. And I don't use them that much, but he was working for me and I was like, no, I'm not going to prescribe it. And he went from being really quite charming and almost jovial to this incredibly serious look on his face. And he said, I could kill you before anyone would know that you're dead. And I realized in that moment that there was a threat because before that, I just didn't have any recognition of it. And all of a sudden, it clicked in my head that this could be a serious situation. So, first off, I thought, what is a hell of a thing to put on a tombstone? Died in a moonlighting gig out of prison. I quickly was like running through my head as like, all right, I'm dealing with a sociopath. What do you do? So I paused and I maintained eye contact with him the entire time. And I said, and I could kill you before they could get back here. And then there was this really, really long silence in which we made like intense eye contact with each other. I don't know what was going on in his head. In my head, I was virtually on the edge of panic, but I maintained my psychiatry face. And then he burst out into laughter and said, I like you, Doc. He said, You're not going to give it to me, are you? I'm not. He's like, All right, man. And he got up and left.
I think you had probably one of the more pleasant experiences. That's a great response. I'll have to use that the next time. What you just described, Robbie, was a scene from Seinfeld where Elaine was talking to a phone company technician. She said, I could have killed you and no one would have known. And his response was, I could have killed you and no one would have known. So, yes, that was a Seinfeld episode.
Life imitating art.
It is. I imagine the Seinfeld thing happened after your thing.
Well,
So maybe
after.
art was imitating life. Yeah.
No, it was well before. It was well before. Yeah, because what I'm talking about probably happening right around 2005 or 6,
Then you were copying the phone technician
maybe.
because she was the one
Maybe.
who threatened him first and he responded.
Your encyclopedic knowledge of Seinfeld has always stunned me. You're not of the right age.
Anyway, yeah, it's a great story. But the reason is just
Dude, we should dedicate an episode to stories from the prison because I've got like
we should.
80.
Yeah, maybe we will. The reason I bring that up, it's not to accuse anybody of being a psychopath. That's not for me to decide. I've done no clinical interviews. The reason that we struggle, those of us who are maybe not psychopaths, with these conversations with them is just that because we're so used to reading people, those secondary characteristics that come up when somebody's lying to us, that sixth sense that you kind of get, it's not a fake thing. I mean, really, there are observations that you make when somebody is speaking. You may not consciously think about it, but when somebody's lying to you, their behavior will typically be the tell. It will be the giveaway. And so in these situations where somebody is behaving abnormally, they're meeting in the parking lot of a Motel 6 in a car, and somebody's handing them a brown paper baggie full of $10,000. They're projecting the illegality of it. They're doing yeah, exactly. That's perfect. The shame. They're projecting that this isn't okay. I am actively trying to hide it from you. But when that person is no longer trying to hide something from you and they're doing it out in the open, our brains just don't have that filter anymore. We're not looking at it as if it's something wrong. When somebody behaves normally while they're doing something abnormal, we're confused because we're looking at something fucking weird, but we don't know why. We don't know why it's weird because they're not telling us that it is. There was this wonderful video from, I don't even know how many years ago, but it was basically a Pop Warner football game. And what happens is all the little kids are in their full-on football uniforms. They're lined up. They're ready to snap the ball. And what happens is the quarterback taps the center on the shoulder. The center turns around and hands him the football, not between his legs, but just gives him the football. The quarterback takes the football and just starts to march out like he's counting off 5 yards as if he were one of the referees calling a penalty or something. He walks past everybody like he's counting off 5 yards. And he gets to the 5-yard mark and he fucking takes off running because nobody else is moving. And he gets a touchdown, and it's because he played it perfectly. Nobody thought what he was doing was weird, even though even as you're watching, you're like, what the fuck's this kid doing? He's marking off 5-yard penalty against the... Wait a minute. Weirdly enough, Robbie, when you ask, why are they able to get away with this? I think it's just that. Because they're treating it like it's normal. They're treating this behavior like, well, we've always done it this way. And the rest of us are going, well, we guess it's okay because they're not hiding it.
It's funny. Back in my football days, we had a similar play in which we would do something very, very similar, which would basically play on the other team's sense of how the system worked. We only trucked it out maybe once because once you do it one time, the other team's looking for it. So we maybe used it once, maybe twice, but it was very, very similar in which we did what everyone expected. And then we did it in a way that no one expected. And the other team didn't know what to do. They couldn't wrap their head around what in the fuck is going on here? I don't know. So no one did anything. And yeah, we scored a touchdown on it. And that's what's happening. That's the perfect analogy. And I'm glad you brought it up because that's exactly what's happening. Our brains are trained to understand a system. and this is how it works. And if something illegal is happening, it happens in the dark in a parking lot where prying eyes cannot see it. But if it happens in the open and it involves massive amounts of money, it can't be wrong because it doesn't fit with our sense of how the world works. And that's what's happening. And there's so many examples. That's the thing that's just stunning. And up until now, it's been touched on. I think this last week, the media has put a lot more energy into looking into this. But the plane, the tungsten deal, the drone deal, the cryptocurrency, this is not how it's supposed to work. This is not how, in the history of our government, this is supposed to work. And you take shamelessness plus this, and this is what you get. And I think psychopathy is the right angle to look at. Psychopathy is actually the psychological angle. This is psychopathy at the highest level. And it's so massive that it's not just confusing. Everyone has been a Dollar General or some store or just whatever, little town store, and watch someone do something that your brain's like, I don't think this is right, but I can't really tell what's going on right now. And this is magnified by a million times.
I think you just invented something. And we got to talk this out because what you just said, you just invented systems psychopathy.
System psychopathy. I invented it.
We got to write a white paper. God, you just nailed it. And it's not about one person. It's not about a psychopath. It's about a system. It's about an institution. It's about markets. It's about media. It's about voters who are behaving in a way where there's just no conscience, where there's no shame, there's no restraint, there's no duty to repair something, there's no felt obligation to the public for the thing that's being damaged in that moment. And it's not one guy acting poorly. It's everything around. Wow, you just blew my mind. And I'm halfway through my Evan Williams America 250 commemorative edition.
Before we invest too much into this idea, we do have to take into consideration that you're working on your probably, I'm looking at this, the extent of the bourbon in those glasses. And I don't think we're working on 2 drinks. I think we're working on 4, maybe 5.
Because I am drinking out of my Shrink the Nation branded Shrink Responsibly tumbler with our Shrink the Nation's Shrink Responsibly seal, website, and American flag because America. And you just picked on something because we see psychopathy. We see it all the time. We see it in the prisons. We see it in the boardroom. We see it in politics. We see it in neurosurgeons. We see it in pilots. We see it in special operators. Psychopathy is, this is Kevin Dutton territory, people. By all means, read Kevin Dutton's work if you want. I recommend going in this order. Herbie Cleckley, Robert D. Hare, Kevin Dutton, John Ronson, in those orders, just kind of read through what they have to say. Kevin Dutton is a great palate cleanser of Robert D. Hare's very pessimistic viewpoint on psychopath. John Ronson being a little bit too apologetic in my book, but he's an excellent writer. Excellent writer.
Yeah.
But what we've not seen is this systems psychopathy. This is awesome. Fucking A.
Well, and in keeping with that, we cannot lay this entirely at the feet of a single man. It is his family. And I have no illusions that he's the mastermind of all this. In fact, I doubt he actually is entirely read in on all the things that are happening. They're happening in his name.
Are you thinking that the 80-year-old man has any idea how to use crypto to grift people out of their money?
I don't.
I honestly think that if he were fully aware of just who was being grifted out of their money with his crypto, he might not want to do it that way. Because the people who are getting ultimately fucked by his crypto company are his supporters. And even he is smart enough to know that there is only so far he can go before people start to fall off his wagon.
Interestingly, when he was asked about it, he's like, I don't know anything about this, but if I did, there's nothing wrong with it, is what he said about this. And I believe that, actually. He knew nothing about it. He has a group of people around him who are engaged in this grift in his name, and I think that's accurate. I think his sons probably are more actively engaged in the grift than he is. But this tungsten deal in Kazakhstan, also Kazakhstan. Thank you. I need someone to translate for me. That
I speak fluent Appalachian.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll translate for you.
It also involves Lubnik and his kid. They're involved in this. And Lubnik, he's out doing all the treaties. He's our point man. Him and Jared, not Jared from Subway, guys, the other Jared. Although, arguably, I think Jared from Subway is probably more famous,
Maybe. So he's the commerce secretary.
more well known. I don't think anyone knows what actual the Jared, whatever
Kushner?
his name is, Kushner. I still believe his voice sounds like Gilbert Godfrey because I don't know if I've ever heard him talk.
If I'm going to be famous for anything, Robbie, it will be for having never heard Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump speak. No idea
I've
what she sounds like. No idea what
I've
he
heard
sounds like.
Ivanka. I've heard
No
Ivanka.
idea what she's. I have no
I've
idea what she sounds
never
like.
heard Jared. Jared's involved in some high level shit, and that's grifty. Actually, that's institutionally grifty. That he is involved in the things that he's involved in. Questionable.
Yeah, questionable. We'll go with questionable. What I find fascinating about this, other than all the other things I find fascinating about it, because I find a lot of things fascinating, because I like the word fascinating. Sometimes I'll use the word
It's
interesting.
it it's fascinating.
What I find really fascinating about it is that when you think about what is it that makes this so difficult for people to understand, I think where you naturally go with it is that because it's out in the open, because it's being disclosed, it seems like, well, that's okay. There's lawyers involved and everything else. And I just don't think that's the reason, Robbie. Like, I don't think
Because we
the
trust the
reason
lawyers.
yeah, no, I really think it's because we just don't have the capacity to understand this level, the amount of people that are involved, because this is a system that has basically just continually rewarded that behavior. It encourages it. And because there's no repercussion in this moment, it's all good. We're fine with it. In fact, we struggle to understand. And maybe part of it is there just aren't specific laws on the books that say you can't do this because it's just never been done before. It's fascinating. It's interesting.
And it's tragic. We're pretty deep into this episode. We
We're
didn't
into
really
Evan
even
Williams bottled and bond now. That's much better. That is a
it's
much
it
better. Yeah.
it's solid. A solid rye, 100 proof, so you get a little more burn than you normally would. So
It doesn't have the aftertaste that
yeah,
these
yeah.
other two. Yeah, it just it has a cleaner taste to it, which is weird to say of any bourbon, especially a rye, especially a 100 proof, but it's just cleaner. I want to call this day 2 of the reflecting pool compared to day 3 of it being refilled. It's not
Well,
pristine, but it's not as bad as it is currently. So, and that's what I started with.
I think it's tragic we didn't get to talk about another grift, which reminds me of Trump Stakes, the Trump cell phone. That's another massive grift.
Yeah. At what point do you blame just because his name is on it and he's selling it? There
I
was
mean, there's an element of responsibility of the jackasses who bought his mean corn and the jackasses who bought his phone. But finally, we have a phone plan for people who think that 5G is Chinese mind control, but still wanted an unlimited data plan. It's hilarious because initially it was like made in the USA. And then eventually they changed it on their website to made with American values in mind. And apparently, American values is a gilded phone made in China. That's American
I'm not even
values.
sure. It's not even gilded, just yellow.
No,
It's a
it's
yellow
just
phone.
painted. It's painted simulated gold. It's what happens when Radio Shack dies and then becomes a political action committee.
Who's your writer? Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about before we go, there were 2 things that occurred that are kind of adjacent.
I definitely want to talk about these.
We have to. This week, active duty Air Force Major Jason Watson was arrested while participating in a protest calling for the impeachment of our president and our vice president while he was at the Capitol. It's a tough story because you have a gentleman who was expressing of his First Amendment rights, but he was doing so in the uniform and he is an active
In
duty
uniform.
service member.
Yep.
The reason that Major Jason Watson was arrested wasn't because he was in uniform. He was arrested because he was on the House steps. Demonstrations are not permitted to be on the House steps unless accompanied by a member of Congress. Now, Representative Al Green had initially accompanied him and the rest of the people protesting, but then he left. And so after he left, police basically gave him a lawful order to end the demonstration or relocate, and he did it. So that's why he was arrested. So it was not because he was in the military. Why this is a big deal is because he was out there protesting in uniform, which everybody in the military knows. You may not say bad things about the commander in chief as a member of the military in uniform. You do have the right to free speech, but you may not use your position in the military to do that.
When you show up in uniform, you convey the message that it is you as a service member with the weight of being a service member, with the weight of being a major in the United States military. I'm not faulting the guy for having an opinion. I'm not faulting the guy for voicing his opinion. I am faulting him in being in uniform. He could have put on civilian clothes. He could have went. He could have voiced his opinion. He could have protested.
Started a podcast.
He could do a lot of things, but good order and discipline does require that you do not carry the weight of being in the military as if it's an official opinion.
Yeah, we've all known that. It's not a secret. The Uniform Code of Military Justice is pretty clear. I imagine that no matter what, he will not be out of the woods. I can't imagine, though, Robbie, this is one of those situations where I think he will pay a price. He will pay it for several years, and then he will probably be pardoned at some point down the line. I don't know when, but it will probably have to be when there is a president who is not the person that he was actively demonstrating against in office. They'll probably now. Do I think that's the right thing to do? Not necessarily. I think he knows the rules and he broke them. I can say that it's admirable for anybody to put their neck on the line for what they believe in. And for that, I think, you know, good for him. Honestly, I would love to have a conversation with him and kind of get
Let's get him
what
on the
his
show, buddy. Let's
I
do
would
it.
love to get him on the show. I mean, there's a lot of people I would love to talk with,
Well,
but I don't necessarily agree with his method. This goes into that category of really what we're talking about, which is that just because you do something that you agree with doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing to do. And in many ways, he may not
so
appreciate that. I think that what he did was wrong by being in uniform. I think by all means, man, show up to the protest, but don't show up in uniform. You
no,
know,
and,
it's
and this carries a little more weight to me, maybe than others, and I'm sure some people probably think it's like a I don't know an exercise in moral courage or whatever. But I have served under many at this point, many different commanders in chief, and I'll take for example when I was at war. I had opinions and I had well formed opinions, and I diverged from maybe what the commander in chief believed. That did not free me from my obligations, and it did not free me from the lawful orders that came down. And there's a certain point where protest actually gets in the way of the job, the duty, the things you have to do in order to protect the soldiers on your left and your right. And this guy should have never showed up in a uniform. He just should not. He wants to voice an opinion, fine. Voice it as a civilian citizen of the United States. Don't voice it in uniform. And this is a guy who stood up there and in my mind was being a martyr. And I don't have much sympathy for him actually at all. And yes, to our tens of yes
I have
listeners, that probably diverges from what your opinion of me might be, but
I have sympathy for him as somebody who felt that the situation was rising to the point, and I think the story brings attention to something beyond.
well, having been with you during that phase, you were thinking of a more honorable and personal sacrifice to express that wasn't public, wasn't for public consumption. It was something you were going to do personally. So I don't have any sympathy for this guy.
Well, I don't agree with the way that he went about it. I can understand, and I think part of it is the way that I have to think about it because there's conflict there in my own mind for sure.
Well,
There's
there's a
definitely
definite
conflict.
conflict.
There's big conflict. I mean, I obviously don't agree with this administration. I have the ability of more freedom. I know what the rule is, and I wouldn't be willing to violate the rule as far as going in uniform and making statements as an officer in public. But at the same time, I can appreciate why if and again, I don't know his story, and maybe that's a part of it. And maybe that's what's missing is I can to be black and
When
white.
when did you get empathy?
I know it's something I woke up
It's the 6 drinks that you've had. Listen,
to the 6 year.
here's the reality, and I imagine some of our tens of listeners have served. I imagine, just statistically speaking. But here's the reality of being a service member. is that when you sign up, when you commit to that cause, you are saying that you are going to do your duty as a service member. That doesn't mean you have to agree with the politics ever. You don't get that luxury. Once you sign up, you no longer have the luxury of agreeing with the politics. You take lawful orders, you follow lawful orders, and you do your goddamn best. Yes, on the ground, there are often situations in which you have to make a call, and sometimes they're hard calls. And we're trained for it, we're educated to do it. But ultimately, you take orders. And when you stop taking orders, that's when soldiers get killed. And everybody who I know who has been in combat and has been sent out on a mission that they thought, this is fucking stupid. This is dumb. This was designed to just get me killed. You have that experience. You know it. I mean, you know it. You know, I'm doing something that's dumb, that's not going to serve a purpose, but you still have to do it. And because when you start second guessing, it doesn't just protect you, it actually puts everyone at risk. So I got zero sympathy for this guy. I'm
Well,
sorry. I don't. I don't.
well, and that's
They're
fine.
the
I mean, I don't know that I expect you to have sympathy for him. What I would categorize it as, again, I don't know what his story is, other than knowing that what he did was explicitly not okay from the military perspective.
Yep. Put on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, you're good. Put on your uniform, fuck.
Not so good
Not so good.
from a perspective of somebody who is potentially witnessing unlawful orders being played out, and that might be a different story. But the thing is, in my
There there
career,
there's a
I
chain of
wasn't.
command and there's a
Well,
mechanism to deal with that.
there is, but and I think maybe that's part of is that it doesn't always work. And so again, and I don't want to give him excuses, and that's because that's not what we're here for. But I guess I could say is a person who stands up and says, "I've had enough." Yeah, they're going to pay a price, and that's what's going to happen. That's just how it goes. Hopefully down the line. I mean, even Chelsea Manning was pardoned by Obama at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
what you
mean,
see is what's the ultimate harm that happens from what this person does. I think at the moment, it's obviously, well, you're doing something wrong that's explicitly forbidden, and you're going to have to pay a price for that. In the long term, was what you're doing really all that harmful? It is in good order and discipline, because when you see a major active duty who's doing this, then the fear is that your younger airmen, your younger soldiers, your spec fours are going to go out and do the same thing. And that does create a problem. And so, will he be made an example of? Absolutely.
he will
Absolutely.
be. And listen, you never give your Spec 4 mafia an excuse to do crazy shit. You just don't.
In all fairness, this was an Air Force officer. Nobody in the Army is going to be like, well, that's a
Well,
fucking good
I mean,
idea. No way. No way.
psychologically, there is a valid point here, which is what does moral action mean when the role restricts the form of moral action you can take? And I get that. And it is part of being in the military. It's just part of it. We all have to deal with that kind of every day. That there's so many things that happen when you're an active duty service member that you don't agree with. It doesn't give you the right to not do it. You signed up, dude. This was a volunteer force.
Well,
You signed the
yeah.
fuck up.
The question isn't free speech versus military discipline. It's that we need to understand that these are two legitimate commitments and that they can collide. And so
They do. They
it's,
often do.
this is, yeah. And unfortunately for him, he chose a path that most people don't. He
They
decided
don't.
that his commitment in his mind to the Constitution overrode his appreciation of it. That's the area that I think that I don't agree with, is that you can say, I have a duty not to follow unlawful orders, which is true. And I'd say to have the courage to disobey unlawful orders isn't a right, it's a responsibility of every military member that's there.
I
But
agree. You do it in private though.
but it is a lawful order to say, don't show up to a protest in uniform, dude.
Yeah.
It's an unlawful order to say, kill these people who are not combatants. That's an unlawful order. And that is an order that I would proudly say, fuck the hell off.
Yep. We have an obligation to not follow unlawful orders, immoral orders. The cost is private. The cost is you stand up and you take your lumps and you take the hit privately. You don't do it publicly. on the steps of the Capitol. So anyway,
Okay, so the last one is that
this is
Donald
my
Trump
favorite one,
made.
actually.
It's my least favorite one for
I
reasons,
love this
but
one.
what Donald Trump had it said that he made a joke, but he opined, as he often does, about giving himself and one of his sons, or maybe both of his sons, medals of honor.
Yeah, because they were going to do a threesome. It was
And they
all
were
it
gonna
was
have they were gonna
threesome.
have a threesome. I can tell you that I threw up a little bit in my mouth
This one
whenever I
got you.
read the fact that he's even suggesting that he might do this worries me that he will actually do this if nobody prevents him from doing it. And so far, I've not seen anybody with the testicular fortitude to tell him no to this point. And the thing is, I don't know if anybody out there has ever read
Citation?
citation. So if anybody has ever read a citation for a Medal of Honor, they're difficult to read. Not because they use big words, but because when you read through them, you realize the sacrifice that this person had to make, the moral decisions, the selflessness, just the opposite of Donald Trump that goes into earning a Medal of Honor, which often leads to dismemberment, death, horrendous, horrendous things.
The official terminology is acts of conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity performed at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty.
Let me read you one and see what you think of somebody like Donald Trump giving himself a Medal of Honor feels like. And I apologize to everybody. If I get through this without, then I deserve another drink. So I want to read this one. This is from, oh my God, this is a child. This is from Corporal Jason L. Dunham of the U.S. Marine Corps during the War on Terrorism for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a rifle squad leader. 4th Platoon Company Kilo, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines Reinforced, Regimental Combat Team 7, 1st Marine Division Reinforced on 14th April 2004. Corporal Dunham's squad was conducting reconnaissance mission in the town of Karbala, Iraq, when they heard rocket-propelled grenade and small arms fire erupt approximately 2 kilometers to the west. Corporal Dunham led his combined anti-armor team toward the engagement to provide fire support to their battalion commander's convoy, which had been ambushed as it was traveling to Camp Huzaiba. As Corporal Dunham and his Marines advanced, they quickly began to receive enemy fire. Corporal Dunham ordered his squad to dismount their vehicles and led one of his fire teams on foot several blocks south of the ambushed convoy. Discovering 7 Iraqi vehicles in a column attempting to depart, Corporal Dunham and his team stopped the vehicles to search them for weapons. As they approached the vehicles, an insurgent leaped out and attacked Corporal Dunham. Corporal Dunham wrestled the insurgent to the ground and in the ensuing struggle saw the insurgent release a grenade. Corporal Dunham immediately alerted his fellow Marines to the threat. Aware of the imminent danger and without hesitation, Corporal Dunham covered the grenade with his helmet and body, bearing the brunt of the explosion and shielding his Marines from the blast. In an ultimate and selfless act of bravery in which he was mortally wounded, he saved the lives of at least 2 fellow Marines. By his undaunted courage, intrepid fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty, Corporal Dunham gallantly gave his life for his country, thereby reflecting great credit upon himself and upholding the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. I mean, I
Was
had
he?
tears in my eyes.
What was he?
What
22. What was he? 20, 20, 22, 21?
he looks like he is all of like 12 years old.
Yeah, this is the story of someone who earns the Medal of Honor. You don't win it. It's not a lotto. You earn it. You earn it with your blood. You earn it with your courage. You earn it because you care more about the people around you than you care about yourself.
What's important isn't just that in order to earn this, there's nothing to be gained. There's no
Nothing.
audience. There's no branding. There's no personal benefit. It's this instantaneous decision to sacrifice yourself so that others can live. And only 1% of the citizens of the United States will ever serve in the military. An even smaller percentage will be put into a position that that's a decision that they have to make or even would make. And so to me, to earn the Medal of Honor it shows a level of bravery and self-sacrifice and a willingness to die. By all means, please look up Jason Dunham. Look him up. And I'll make sure we link this on our website too, but he's just a child. He's a kid. I've lived twice as much as he has, at least. At least.
When I listened to this on the news, I laughed I laughed in the context of hearing about this isn't necessarily on brand for us. We like to make fun of things. I can't make fun of this. You talk about this kid, you talk about what he did, and then you think of this 80-year-old man who had bone spurs, who avoided service, who's going to give the Medal of Honor to himself and his two sons, neither of which meet the criteria, not even close. It demeans the award. That the award is really, and this is the thing, and you nailed it, that these people are making decisions in a moment that they don't think it through. It's not an opportunity to weigh the pros and cons. It is at their core that they are going to protect the people around them, even when it costs them their lives. And they don't hesitate because they can't. They don't have time to hesitate. They don't have time to think it through. They just do it. That's what the Medal of Honor's for. It's not so Donald Trump and his sons can have a threesome, which is fucking weird in and of itself. The terminology was just weird.
How would you say that? Yeah.
Other than that, you're an 80-year-old demented man, I don't know. I don't know. But it's a
No.
threesome,
Yeah.
baby.
He's got a threesome with sons.
And I'm
Well,
going to leave it to our audience to think, where does Eric fit in the threesome? Where's Eric? What's his role? I'm thinking human centipede is what I'm thinking.
hey, yeah.
Oh
God,
my
dude,
God.
I'm gonna have nightmares. I'm gonna have to drink more.
Yeah, there's only one solution to this one. Let's drink more. At any rate, folks, go to the web, read some of these things. Seriously, go read some of these citations. They're breathtaking. And there's one of those things that you can't help but question. What would I have done? I speculate for most of us, probably not what they did. Probably.
Yeah. No, it's
We'd
it.
like to believe it. It is offensive at the highest level that there was even a joke, even if it was just a joke, that he was going to just go ahead and award it to him and his boys so they could have a threesome.
Yeah.
I mean, if they
I
want to have a
mean,
threesome, cool. Well, not cool. Weird. Do it. Whatever. Do it in the White House. Do it in the Lincoln bedroom.
he's already built a UFC ring on the front lawn. They don't give a
Decorum.
fuck about, yeah, they can have their threesome. I always wonder, you go through life, Robbie, and you think about there's going to be these moments where it's like the last time, you're going to come across like, this is the last time I'm going to do something, X, Y, or Z. Like, I'm going to just get too old.
Everything.
I'm not going to be able to do this. Yeah. And when you're younger, you never think that's the last time I'm going to do that.
No one ever knows the last time. My God, if we knew the last time, it would probably not be the last time.
But I still wonder, and I think like at some point, Donald Trump is going to do the last thing that I find just completely incorrigible. He's going to finally draw a line in the sand for himself that even he can't cross. And when he made this comment, joke or not, about the Medal of Honor, I realized not yet. He hasn't hit his final time yet. Yeah.
$2.3 billion in crypto, not the last time. Joking about the Medal of Honor, not the last time. Something has to be the last time, dude. It has to. It just has to.
It's going to get there. I don't know. But anyway, so, all right, we've had a long discussion. God, there's so much more we could talk about these, to be honest, but we'll leave it at this. We're going to hopefully get this down to an hour. Any prescriptions, Robbie?
Do I have a prescription? All right. Americans must remember that disclosure is not a shower. A conflict of interest does not become clean because someone itemizes it. Politicians must understand that filing the paperwork is not moral absolution. It's just the receipt.
Mine is going to be that every American is going to get a laminated wallet card that says, if the grift requires a flow chart, it may still be a grift.
It's still grip.
Reminder to everyone.
I'm
All right.
with you, man.
So, as Robbie has experienced with our new tumblers that we're both enjoying our bourbon with, I encourage anybody go on our website, shrinkthenation.com/merch. Pick up a tumbler. They're pretty cool. Honestly, I really like the design. They're very nice tumblers. But drink along with us, have a bourbon, make light of some of the stuff if you possibly can. Grab a shirt. What I learned recently, Robbie, is that if you go out into public wearing a shirt that says, I'm anti-Nazi, anti-rape, and anti-murder, call me old-fashioned, people notice and they ask questions of you. Now, I think it's because the words Nazi, murder, and rape are on your shirt, but once they realize that you're against those things, they still want to read it, and it's pretty funny. So I highly recommend picking up one of those. We have Dr. Robbie's Alpha Male Academy shirts out there, and I'm sure we'll have some more later. For anybody who has not checked out our new website yet, shrink.thenation.com, we've got a lot of really great information and we're adding to it every week, trying to just get you more insight into this craziness that's going on. So, by all means, check that out. We're getting our episodes on there. All the stuff that we talk about, we're trying to get linked in there. At least for season two. If we go back and get season one done, we'll do as well. But check it out. I mean, it's really cool. We have some cool stuff. And I am super excited to announce, Robbie, that we have not one, but two web comics to check out. So follow along with our Shrink the Nation web comic, which is a cartoonized version of me and Robbie doing funny shit that Robbie and I do. And for those of you who are more into a higher brow kind of comic, there's Dr. Bojangles, which is my personal favorite, a dog psychiatrist. So check it out. It's just good fun, but something to hopefully lighten the mood on everything. And again, drinkthenation.com. Give it a look. Go ahead and like us on socials if you can. But hell, you just go to our website and you can get all our episodes, our whole archives in there with all of our web comics. And we've got a lot of fun stuff coming out. So there should be updates damn near daily. So pretty excited. Our website's looking really cool. And those of you who haven't looked at it, on 4th of July, we had a patriotic theme. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some holiday themes as well, but otherwise it'll be our kind of standard template. So that's it. Anything else, Robbie?
I think we've killed it all.
I don't think we killed it. I think there's a lot more we could talk on these things, to be honest, but maybe in future episodes. I'm actually hoping we'll get maybe some guests down the road. So we're working on that too. So, all right.
One thing I can say is David has invested a great deal of energy into the website. It is a multimedia extravaganza. I think there's something there for everyone. Dig into it. Get in there, look at it, look at the comics, which I personally find quite funny, largely because I think I'm the butt of the joke most of the time. But hop on in there, take a look. And actually, it ties in beautifully to the psychology. It gives you the themes. Take a look.
Awesome.
And
Love it.
refer your friends.
And our newsletter. We've revamped our newsletter too. It'll come out every Friday morning. Should give you everything you need to know about the current episode. It'll give you some updates on stuff that's coming out, web comics that are there. We're making clips, throwing them on YouTube. All that stuff's there. Quick links to everything. It's everything Shrink the Nation. Get involved. The safer thing you can do than throwing on a military uniform and going to a protest is throwing on a Shrink the Nation shirt and going to a protest. Let everybody know how you feel. So, all right, that's it. Let's cue up this music, and we are out.